CounterClock Season 1, the trailer, and then Episode 1 of Season 1 was the first dive I took into podcasting in a professional way. And it changed everything. Season 3 drops on the 29th, so 9 days from today. Season 3 of CounterClock is dropping. So it's been a lot of work in the progress. It's, obviously ready to go out to the masses, but it's been over a year, right at a year, a little over a year.
Wow.
In production. Yeah.
And when do you stop and it starts, or are you involved throughout in production?
I'm involved from day one. So from figuring out which case I'm going to cover to all the groundwork, the writing, post-production, content management, seeing through the editing process. We outsource the editing, but everything to marketing to literally the day it launches. So I'm in all of it.
Okay, so Philly, let me ask you. You talk about the case selection. Your season 3 takes place from a case that is 1989.
Mm-hmm.
The season 2, which I'm listening to, is 1980?
Yep. 1990.
Is that a magic number? Is 30 years like a place where there's enough information around for you to be able to dig in?
No, so that's what's so interesting is like I season 1 of CounterClock is 1997 with the Denise Johnson case. Season 2 is 1990 when the crime occurred, but all of these cases have presence in today. The only one that didn't was Denise Johnson, and I was able to bring it into today's time and get it to be actually worked on in real time. But yeah, it's something about the 80s and 90s. I think it draws my attention as a journalist because it's this weird between of technology and DNA and sciences was kind of on the cusp, but really not there yet. And so I think a lot of things happened with these cases and their investigations and the criminal justice system that was just sort of on the fringe of, a modern era. And so I think they kind of just got lost or written off, or things were not properly understood. And now that we have the advantage of, 2021, we can go back and reevaluate and go, wait a minute, if we had known then what we know now, it can change everything about what we think we know about these cases. So it's not really a magic number, but I think the 90s, late 80s is just where I've kind of landed on research.
It just before we get deep into the pod, which I feel like we've jumped into right from the off,
Yeah.
You're primarily an investigative journalist. That's what you describe yourself as?
Yeah, I'm an investigative journalist. I have been for about 7 years.
And that was from school. That was how did you get into that? Where did that begin?
Yeah, so I went to university at UNC Chapel Hill in North Carolina. I'm from North Carolina. And I went originally for the sciences. So I went for chemistry. But after getting there and placing into all my classes, I realized I really liked storytelling and I really liked being with people and understanding complex issues. And so that really launched me into my journalism education. And then when I graduated from university, I went into television broadcasting news, which is a general assignment, all encompassing. You're thrown on the streets and told to find a story, and TV is very, very fast paced. So that's kind of how it got started. And then in my career from 2014 until now, I've just been doing, stories and crime coverage. I left the TV news industry in March of 2020, but I started doing podcasting in the beginning of 2018. So I've kind of done both simultaneously, and then now obviously moved on to just podcasting.
So that's a mega thing that people are going to want to know about. What made you sort of make that final transition where you sort of realize that actually podcasting might well be where this is all happening for me?
Yeah, so the broadcast news industry, I had a wonderful experience for 6 years doing that, but it's limited in the scope of time that you're able to deliver a story and really uncover all the facts and work the case. There's deadlines every day, sometimes every couple of hours. And so I over the years, I realized, there are some stories I really want to look more into, and I feel like I can do a lot more justice for and really give the whole set of facts in a compelling way. And over the years, I realized that that was not something I would necessarily be able to attain in broadcast news. And so I figured, how can I use the skills that I have as a journalist, as an interviewer, as a researcher, as an investigator, and be able to do the work I want to do. And podcasting really opened up the ability for that to happen. And so I think that was the transition, the desire to do longer form stories and the desire to really give the time where I felt I could make even more of a difference. Not that the stories I was doing in shorter time weren't, it was just sort of a preference, and the podcasting market was just really opening up in, 2018, 2019, 2017, that time frame.
So when you were in TV, what was the longest piece that you'd filmed that would be crime centered?
I think the longest story that aired in a single setting was probably just shy of 3 minutes. That's the only amount of time that I would get to tell the story, go through all the interview sound bites, really put it together. So that shows you, when you compare that to a 40-minute podcast episode, very different. But I don't think the story quality is necessarily bad because one's shorter. I think it's just the amount of information you can actually give the listener or the audience is bigger.
And finesse, right? Like, it enables you to handle things a bit more delicately than you might in it. Do you think that's why tabloid headlines, for want of a better word, are as they are? Because if you consider one episode of yours that would be compressed into a 3-minute segment, I mean, how would you do that without just grabbing headlines?
It's a difficult balancing act. In news, it's really, you want to be accurate. You want to put the facts. You want to give people the most important information and really hit the high points. And any peripheral explanation beyond that, it is lax. And so, yeah, if you look at headlines, they're meant to grab attention. They're meant to pull the audience in. And TV news that's really what they're after. And I don't think TV news presents itself as anything more than that, right? I don't think they're promising you anything more than what you're getting. So for what it was and what it is, I think it can be done well. But I think in terms of really digging into a story and doing it justice, I just felt like podcasting was the way to go. And so far it's worked out. I mean, I can't think that it's been a failure in any way.
What was your first podcast, episode 001? Was that doing this series, or did you do other stuff first?
No, CounterClock season 1, the trailer, and then episode 1 of season 1 was the first dive I took into podcasting in a professional way, and it changed everything after that.
Where did that come from?
The choice of the case, or just
how did the discussion to even make episode 1 come about? Was it? Did you meet?
There wasn't. It there really wasn't. I was working full time as a TV journalist, a reporter, and balancing a hectic work schedule. And my schedule at the time allowed me to go into work at about 3:00 in the afternoon. So from morning until about 2:30, I had my free time of the day, and I realized, I'm listening to true crime podcasts. I'm an investigator. I think I can use my skills. And so I just decided one day to look at a case from my hometown and thought, surely there is not this, lengthy unsolved murder in my hometown, or I would know about it. And I didn't. And Denise Johnson's case was the only one. And so Googling it, after 20 minutes, I was writing emails to the local police department. I was trying to contact family. I mean, it was just that quick.
Reporter activated. Let's go.
Yeah, it was just me. And I realized, like, my word, nobody has done anything on this case in a long, long, long time. And she's right here. I mean, just miles from my family's home. How is this even possible? So, yeah, I think it was just really sort of organic in that way.
So I should make clear, I hadn't listened to any true crime podcasts until a couple of months ago. I came in via what I think a lot of people probably came in via the comedian route. Podcast to me was comedy. then I got this gig and I started speaking to people and obviously listening to the pods, and I was like, whoa, okay, I'm a bit naive. There's a whole lot of different things out there. The first person who I listened to was Laura Richards, whose pod is fascinating, and she's a brilliant person. She does all sorts of crazy stuff that I sit there and feel very lazy about. I have no different opinion of every investigative journalist I meet, but yours, you really tell a story. Like, I feel guilty calling it entertaining because you know what I mean? Like, it's obviously a very delicate subject, but at the same time, you tell it in such a manner. It's so gripping to listen to.
It's engaging. I think it's I would never want anyone to think that my show is entertaining, but at the same time, obviously that's why people come to a lot of true crime podcasts. That's beyond my control. But yeah, the engaging storytelling is really what I'm after, because I think when you tell a story in the right way, the facts and the message you're trying to get across becomes that much more gripping and that much more important. Because not everyone can understand minute, complicated things or timelines or science. But if you lay it out in a way that they can, it becomes, oh my goodness, I had no idea this happened or could happen. And so that's where I feel like it really impacts people.
Have you presumably you've had people contact you from home since the show went out? Did season 1 do as well as season 2 did? I mean, because the numbers are crazy.
Yeah. I mean, just in terms of analytics, if you're looking at it from that perspective, which again, for me as a journalist is great. Numbers are numbers, but I want to see people exposed to the story. I want people to know this is a real person with a real story and a real crime, and real resolution needs to happen. So the more people that can hear about that, that's what matters to me. But yeah, I mean, season 1 was tremendously successful. It followed up with a pretty close launch of season 2. That, for those that have heard the show, being in the same geographic area with a lot of similar things, there ended up being some, connections between the characters in those cases, though they're totally separate. And that was a surprise to me as an investigator, and it was a surprise for the listener. I think they both were tremendously successful, and it's obviously grown the AudioChuck brand, and I think that's a good thing, because we're really about delivering stories in a similar manner on all of our platforms.
Who is AudioChuck? Are you AudioChuck?
No, AudioChuck is the CEO is Ashley Flowers. She is the host of Crime Junkie with her co-host Britt. So Ashley is the owner, establisher of AudioChuck. She approached me in 2018 after an initial release of CounterClock season 1 that was fairly successful on its own with just me doing it. She approached me and said, "Hey, I love your work. I love what you're doing. Let's work together. Let's keep putting out more of CounterClock. Let's work on other shows." And so her business began to grow, and I kind of came on board as a token investigative journalist, because that was not something that she had in her background, and I think we just blended really well. And now we're able to do a lot more work and good high quality work together. So yeah, she is AudioChuck, and I now work full time for the network.
Wow. You've done TV. You've now moved into podcasting. How does the workplace differ from podcasting to television?
Well, I mean, yeah, I work mostly in the field or from home, so my schedule is vastly different. But the trade isn't all that different. I'm still meeting people in their homes, calling them, trying to do interviews, researching, pulling records. All of that's still the same. As far as workplace, yeah, I don't work around anybody anymore. I'm not doing live shots anymore. It's a different environment. I appreciated it for what it was and still have many friends in the broadcast industry. But I think it was just time for me to transition out and start something new. But yeah, I'm a little more by myself now. And that's okay with me.
I was going to say, it looks like I've just brought this to your attention. I feel terrible.
Yeah, I lock in, and I really dedicate a lot of time and effort, and having that freer schedule now allows me to do more work and get a little bit more done. So yeah, it's definitely different.
Who mixes and produces and everything else like that on the show? Is that you?
No. So for my shows, we outsource to a company called Resonate Recordings. They're a great podcast editing business. And then we also have some in-house editors in the AudioChuck network. And so David Flowers is an editor on a couple of shows that I host. So yeah, we've got a couple resources in places. But though I used to do the editing, and when I was in TV, I don't do that for podcasting because I really just have to put my energy into the reporting, the writing, and the management of the content. Because editing, as anyone knows, that's pretty lengthy. It can take a long time to really get it.
In terms of kit, you talk about being out in the field. What do you use? Is it stuff you pay attention to, or is it stuff you get given, or how does it work?
Yeah, I mean, as far as equipment goes, I mean, it's I use a lot of Zoom mics, XLR mics. I try and keep everything digital. A lot of softwares to back up things, house things. Files get pretty big. So yeah, I mean, I'm very hands-on. I bring everything with me, laptops. Yeah, I mean, it's all these things that I had to use in my previous professional career. And again, that experience allowed me to kind of easily transition versus coming from, I've never turned a recorder on in my life. I've only written notes on a notebook. So, I think it's just knowing what good equipment works. And I watched a lot of YouTube tutorials on how to use certain equipment, what things work, what things fail. It's just trial and error. I think anyone who has started a podcast can attest to that.
And what was your pandemic recording schedule like? Did you do it all at home? Did you come in to the office? Like, how did it work?
Well, I was producing a lot and reporting a lot for season 3. So, with protocols in place, I was traveling to and from Indiana a couple of times, where AudioChuck is headquartered out of Indianapolis. I was in the field speaking with people on, a safe distance and working around all those protocols and things. But as far as my recording, I was recording Dark Arenas, which is another show that I host for the network. And I was recording and creating Park Predators, which is another show, and doing other voice work. So I kind of just had a schedule here in my home studio, and kind of worked it out and scheduled it out in between travel and writing downtime to write. So yeah, it wasn't too rigid, but I kind of work in quarters, like, all right, all the reporting's mostly done. Now I need to start writing. Now the writing needs to go to post. And then, so it's like weeks where I have been doing the same thing.
Are you switch on, switch off? Like, do you do 7 days straight and then fall apart for 3 days, or how do you schedule your work week?
No, I mean, I put everything in my calendar. I'm hyper organized, maybe to a fault in some way, but I do a lot of, research, all my data collection in my head before I'll even line up interviews. And that can take anywhere from weeks to a month to 2 months. So I kind of work in these segments. And so I kind of work out, okay, if I want to get through these number of case files, I'm going to block a week. That's all I'm going to work on. If I got interviews in the same city, let me try and line up 3 or 4 interviews while I'm there instead of making multiple trips. So I kind of work it in that way, but it's pretty free flowing for the most part. And sometimes you'll get a call and someone wants to talk and you drop everything because you've been working for 6 months to get this person to talk to you. So changes.
Let's get into well, hang on a minute. Let me ask you one other question. You do lots of pods. Do you want to, while I've got you, do you want to just give me a brief overview of what they're about, just so that people listening might go, oh my God, I didn't know she did that as well.
I know. It's always so cool when someone discovers that I host another show or created another show. It just makes my heart so happy. So CounterClock is an investigative series. It is looking in depth at the full scope of an unsolved homicide or questions around a homicide. So that's that one. Dark Arenas is a podcast that is another mini series, and each episode is an interview between me and someone who works at a very, dark profession, a profession in which the subject matter they have to deal with is dark, but because they do that job, it actually has a really good effect on greater society. So for that series, I interview people from the FBI, the ATF, forensic anthropologists, all of these professions that, oh my goodness, what they do is very dark, but, it shines a lot of light for people. So, and then Park Predators is a research-based show similar to Crime Junkie in the aspect that there isn't any original reporting in Park Predators. And the sole focus of that show is each episode focuses on a homicide or suspicious death that occurred within the boundaries of a national park, parkland, or recreation area. And so it's very in-depth researched, and it's all over North America. Season 2 that comes out this summer is now going beyond North America. So it's very unique, very different. And those cases just are so interesting to me, and I love researching and writing that show because I think so many people don't realize how many deaths occur, homicides or very suspicious, because of the nature area that it took place in and why the perpetrator would have chosen that location. And so, yeah, it's just pretty fascinating.
I've been speaking to you for half an hour. You don't strike me as a particularly dark or gruesome person. How come all of your shows have these horrific undertones? Where does that come from?
Yeah, I definitely am not. I obviously am in the true crime space. I don't occupy a lot of my free time with murder or
death and
true
destruction
crime content. I watch a TV show here or there, something interesting, but I think for me what it really is not necessarily understanding so much like, oh, why does a perpetrator do this, or what's their psyche, and like all the focus on them. What I try and look at it as is, what are the facts of this story, and what hasn't been told, and what do people need to learn from this? Not that the victim in any of these cases did anything to bring this on themselves. That's not at all what I'm saying. I guess what I mean is learning from these and trying to figure out, what did law enforcement do that was beneficial? What did they not do? How does the criminal justice system really work in some of these cases? And like in a show like Park Predators, if one person can listen to that show and they're out in a park somewhere and something feels off, they might remember what they heard on that show and go, let me go this way or that way, or behave differently or something, and that could help, change their life or someone else's life. So I try and approach it that way, and I feel like I try and leave the listener with that as well. So yeah, I don't focus on the dark, but I think, we all know that there are many crimes that occur and there are many murders that occur, and that is a reality that I think we'll never not face. But how can we learn from it and, evolve in understanding it?
How do you not get driven towards some level of activism when you're especially, look, I can only talk specifically about I'm in the middle of season 2, and
Yeah.
you provide, again, no spoilers, but you provide some revelations along the way, even early doors. Have to be honest with you, I listened to episode 1 and I thought, well, I already know what happens here. I definitely don't need. Oh my god, that's not what happened. But you uncover some things that you could only describe as blatantly wrong. Like when you look at them through a modern lens and you look back, how do you deal with that? Like, what happens? Is there anything you've uncovered where you're like, I need to do something about this? This can't just exist in my head and in my podcast.
Right. Yeah. And when I find those things out and I put them in the show, or as the show comes out, I try and advocate for the victim. I try and advocate for, here are the wrongs that were clearly blatant. how does that affect, like in season 2, the suspected perpetrator, right? Well, that's, what is the message here that's been going out for all these years? And let me correct that. And if I can correct that, what can then happen beyond that? And so that's really what I'm after. And I know that's a huge mission of Audio Chuck, particularly like with Crime Junkie. Yes, those stories are research based, but if we can help people who identify with the victims, who identify with the families, like, can we promote their nonprofits? Can we promote legislation changes? I mean, what are the things that we can do? And I mean, yeah, at some point I have to sit back and I go, this is angering me so much. But instead of getting bogged down in that, let me tell the story. And I want to just see how many other people identify with this sentiment, and then we can move forward to try and push for change, or what have you. So yeah, there's activism. I think if you do this long enough, you will be affected by it. I hope in an activism way, instead of I'm very, very, sad all the time and this affects me. It does, but don't dwell on that. What can you do better? So
what's the difference between a one show investigation and a one season investigation? So when you're talking about Park Predators,
right.
That's a one-hit wonder, right? You go in, you deal with it, you're done in an episode, you move on to another one on the next one.
Right.
So obviously in CounterClock, it stretches out over, what is it, 10? Is it 9 or 10?
And season 3 is 20 episodes.
So I mean, there must be an extraordinary difference between what goes into those shows.
Hundreds and hundreds of hours of workload on my part is the difference. CounterClock is original reporting, so I am finding out information that has never before been known or been brought to light, and I am convincing people that it is time to tell this story from, square one until now. And so that takes a lot of time with record collection, interview collection, research. It's just a totally different ball game. For research-based shows like Park Predators, it is typically I'm researching a case, and in many of them, it has sort of a beginning, middle, and end. It has the crime, the investigation, and the aftermath, the arrest and process through the criminal justice system. Some of those cases don't have that last piece to them. Some of them are still open-ended, so a call for action, the FBI is still looking for this person, that sort of thing. But yeah, each episode is different, and I think it's just because, there is a succinct story to tell that, has been either widely publicized or, there's enough material there to kind of tell the story. With CounterClock, I mean, this is stuff that is literally happening and being uncovered in real time. So yeah, the workload is much more significant for CounterClock.
Do you ever discover things and have to stop and be like, okay, I need to take this to law enforcement before I even continue talking about it? That happens.
That happens.
And you get reaction from your action?
Yes. In CounterClock, there is a lot of communication that happens behind the scenes on my end, where I will give everything that I not just what I think is important, but everything that is of relevance that feels like, is new. I will put that to law enforcement. I get reactions in some cases. The end of season 1 is a perfect example of that. Where, the district attorney in the county had no clue the case even existed. And now not only does he know, but he is now actively able to open it and have people currently working it. So that's a huge, huge difference. But there are even things that I don't put into the show, not just for editorial reasons, but because if I put that out there, is that going to stunt law enforcement's ability to utilize that as a resource? I can't guarantee that they'll ever maybe do their job and go look at that, but I don't want to, cut their arm off, so to speak, before they can even get that chance. So there's judgment calls that I have to make, but for the most part, yeah, I give them stuff and I say, hey, it's up to you. But this is now, you can't say you didn't know about it. So yeah, the burden's really on them at that point.
The pod has a really good soundtrack. Like the accompanying audio is really clever at points. Like it really takes you to that place. How much of that is obviously the editors are looking after that side for you. do you ever sort of hear a bit and go, hang on, you can't put that there?
Yeah, so with the scripts, I write all of the scripts for all of the shows that I host and create, and I actually put sound design written into the script. So I'll say,
Stage
use
direction
this
sort of
natural.
thing.
Yeah, basically, use this sound effect, use this actual sound from when I was in the field and I happened to capture it, that sort of thing. So all those directions are in there. And for the most part, they follow those. And I'm really big on sound design in terms of taking people to locations, taking people to environments. A lot of people that listen to Park Predators say it feels like I was there. Like I thought someone was walking up behind me because I heard branches crack, and I was listening to the episode when I was in a park. Like, so it's very. I want people to feel that. And so I kind of write that all in there, and that's important to me. And I try and make it as authentic as possible. There are some podcasts out there that sound effects are kind of just like everywhere, and they're not very blended, and it's kind of like, a little overdone. I try and make it more natural, and I think people appreciate that. And I think again, it's all part of that storytelling. That's why I'm
Where does
after.
that come from? You don't have that sort of media training in that regard, right? You were a reporter and you started off doing biology or was it chemistry?
Yeah.
So
So
you've got no theatre training in that regard.
no,
What makes you think that way?
it came from wanting to tell good, solid, creative stories, even in news. So, aside from the breaking news that I was covering on a daily basis, the daily pieces that I would put together, I tried to really do a lot of that similar thing. And people that are very good at that in the broadcast industry, I think, that stays with them. It's learned, it's not taught. And so I just kind of took that with me into podcasting, and I felt like it was just so necessary for the type of show that I envisioned and I wanted, because the way CounterClock sounds is the way I envisioned it from the day that I wrote, the first episode. It's what I wanted, and I think that it just really resonates with people, and I want it to be that way. But yeah, it's just something you have a creative style in your head, and you go, I want to hear it like this, not like this, like this, and
It's very
that's
specific. I
just the
mean, that's
direction I
probably
have
why
to
it
get.
takes a year to make
It
a
is.
season, right? That's the detail
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
is is a really big part of it. So when you did TV, how many people would watch you? How many
Well,
viewers did the news have in your?
yeah, in my market here, so I worked when I left TV news, I was in like the top 52 or 53 market in the country. And so I, I can't even remember because this area is just exploding, but I would say probably maybe between 500,000 and 1 million viewers a night. I want to say that's what our goal was. So yeah, a lot of exposure to the stories, and um, yeah, news was very big in the digital space as well. Those clicks, those shares, those streams were really big, even aside from the TV sets in people's homes. So Facebook Live, right? That's changed everything.
But presumably now your audience is what 6-7 times
Yeah.
what it was.
Yep.
Are you inundated with people saying, "I need you to look at this case"?
Yeah, that's another thing that occurred after the initial release of CounterClock was, and it really, it just breaks my heart, and it's a reminder how many cases are out there of missing persons, unsolved homicides, wrongful convictions, things like that. Yeah, I mean, on a regular basis, my Facebook page inbox has multiple requests. The email for CounterClock has multiple requests. Crime Junkie, Audio Chuck as a whole. Please look into this case. You did so much for this case. Can you look into mine? And I would cover everyone if I could. I mean, I would. I think any attorney who feels the same way about wrongful convictions or something, they would say the same thing.
Yeah,
I
you've
wish I
got to
could
draw the
represent
line
everyone.
somewhere, right? Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
but I really try and pick the cases that I feel have access to a lot of information, and the best way I can use my skills. And I never want to say turn anyone away, but I do have to, like you said, draw the line somewhere and put my effort to what I can accomplish in the time frame that I can. But it is tough to get those requests and go, oh, I really want to help you, or oh, this is heartbreaking. But yeah, it's just part of the job. I even got that in news, so I don't think that will ever go away.
You must establish relationships with people when you're making these shows. This is something that always makes me curious, right? You're either going to meet a person and think you're full of crap, like I can tell that you're just feeding me what you're meant to be feeding me because you've done it for 30 years. What do you do when you get in that situation? You're like, this is all pointless because I know you're lying. I've got everything else around it, but I'm going to finish this interview in case anything comes out.
Well, I think my process with that is I come prepared. I come prepared so that if someone gives me an answer, I have the ability to right then and there say, hey, this says X, Y, and Z. I actually spoke to these two people you're talking about, and they told me the opposite's true. So in that moment, getting that confrontation, getting that answer is critical, because you only get one shot at that. And so that's what's really important to me. If it's one of those situations where I kind of want to feel them out, then go back, do a little more research, feel them out again. I've called people 2, 3, 4 times, and by the fourth time, all right, okay. And so, and they're not going to do that with law enforcement necessarily, but they'll do that with me. So that's where I think I have a little bit of an advantage. And so, yeah, there are some times where I sit and I go, well, I don't think you're telling me the truth, but maybe I'll just hold off on confronting you until I talk to this other person, because I have a feeling they're going to tell me something different. And so it's all a process.
Are you as brave in person as you are on the phone, or is there a different version of Delia depending on?
No, I think you could ask anyone I've ever worked with. If I know my stuff and I'm talking to you, we're going to talk. Yeah, I'm not going to be any different. I'm not going to hide anything from you. Obviously, there's strategies on how to interview people, but no, I'm very much the same on the phone, in person, what have you. Almost to a fault. My husband, hey, I want to go with you there. I know you're brave, but let me go with you. Like there's that piece of my life.
Does he insist? Are there points where he's like, look,
yeah.
you're not doing it. I'm going to sit 3 tables across, but.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's sat in cars. He's waited. He's been in the same rooms, and, maybe the people didn't know he's my husband.
Yeah.
So there's yeah. But
what does he do? What does he do in day-to-day life?
He's in finance. He's a CFO.
Oh, okay. So he's miles away. It's not like he's an investigative reporter, so he's looking at it.
He has no background in what I have, but, he's brilliant and he's the best. But very different work structures, for sure. Yeah,
I bet so. So what's changed from season 1, where you basically dropped the release of CounterClock? It was fresh, right? That was the first thing you did?
Yeah, season 1 of CounterClock.
So how did, from when that launched, what did your promotion of season 1 look like versus the journey that you're on now for season 3, having banked 2 phenomenally successful seasons even, and your other stuff, of course. How did it differ from sort of trying to launch a podcast effectively to now where you've got an established podcast and presumably you just want to grow that?
Yeah, at this point, it's really just growth, maintaining the listenership that we have, continuing to do the good quality work, and push towards the messaging that AudioChuck is all about. In launching season 1 of CounterClock, and Ashley and I, we put our heads together. She had a great platform with Crime Junkie and the business that she was creating. I had an interesting platform in the television news broadcast space coming from that place, and so. Yeah, it was really just promoting, saying, hey, listen to this show, let us know your feedback. And every season since, it's really been, pushing towards the next season, but at the same time, continuing to update listeners on, hey, just so you know, I haven't forgot about these cases. Here's what I can release on this. And we do a lot of that in our Q&A episodes at the end of each season. We try and bring that back because, it's not really ideal to just put out like a 10-minute update, especially with the way CounterClock is structured. It's just not that type of show. So, in terms of promotion, I think we're just social engagement with listeners, utilizing all the platforms that AudioChuck has. And I think that's really been valuable. And it's become something that is just so part of our brand. It's a good thing.
When did season 2 finish? When was it? When was the last release date?
Season 2, I think it was like the week before Thanksgiving of 2020. So, which is kind of incredible because literally, I get this all the time. When's the next season coming from people? So, season 2 ended almost end of November, and season 3 is launching in 9 days. That's like 5 or 6 months between actual listening. So, I stay to a very pretty consistent schedule, and I don't want people to have to wait another year or 2 years to get a season. I really try and make it, in sequence. But yeah, end of November was the wrap of season 2.
One of the amazing things for us, seems like an opportune moment to plug the PodBoard, really. The amazing thing for us is we only picked you guys up in December when we sort of turned on the activation of wide searching on the charts. You've never left it. Or
Nope.
you've certainly never left the 100 in the duration of the time, even in conversation, which is the most interesting part for us. For you, how does social media fit in with the podcast? Because obviously, when you're on TV, there's only so much you can sort of respond to everyone that shouts at you, right? But
Yeah.
where do you do most of your social, and where do people reach out to you if they actually want to get in touch?
Instagram, Audio Chuck on Instagram, me on Instagram. I'm posting little teasers and updates and part of my process in my studio. People can really identify with me as a host. They can identify with Audio Chuck as the network, and then the shows themselves have their social aspects to them. So yeah, Instagram's big. Twitter is big. Facebook. Different kind of delivery on Facebook. It's really not that second to second that you get on that Instagram and Twitter feel. But Facebook, I get tips for the case through Facebook. Not often have I can't think of a time where I've gotten that on like Instagram or Twitter. So yeah, I mean, a lot of different ways, engaging for the cases themselves, and then promotion of the show, and engaging listeners and giving them extras and feeling like they're involved in the journey.
Do you can you ever see yourself going back to conventional media, I guess? Should we call it that? I mean, presumably you must have a roadmap ahead of you that you could do this for 20 years just with what you know now.
Oh man, I mean, it's constantly evolving, right? I mean, podcasts have even evolved from the day they came on the scene. Television news is forever changing. Print is, I mean, light years from what difference from what it was 5, 10 years ago. So as a journalist, I see myself continuing to do this podcasting, full time. But I think if I ever went back to a TV type career or vein of profession, I could see myself doing these, maybe documentary type true crime. It's basically my show, but in life, and not just audio. Yeah, the visual piece of that. I could see that being something that, again, is just impactful and powerful, and really goes along with what I'm doing. So, but going back to traditional reporting, I could, but I don't think I will. You kind of, grass is greener, and you kind of want to stay there for a little while.
With the lack of imagination of TV and movie execs, as it currently is, and this desperate grab for more content to be able to put into the subscription-based content models. We were having a conversation the other day. It must be a matter of time before they start looking at the successful docu-series pods and start saying, well, hang on, this needs to be on Netflix or Amazon or wherever.
Yeah.
Presumably you've written it already. It's basically back to an editor and say, colour this in, right?
I mean, I think from what I have dabbled and learned of that industry, I mean, visuals kind of are everything. So in a way, yeah, a lot could already be done. But I think, there are those invaluable things in documentaries where you get that one shot, you get that one chance. Archive footage is what it is. But if you're doing something in real time and you're going back to the crime scene and you happen to run into someone by happenstance that's associated with the case, you can only get that once. So, could you recreate it and fill in? And yeah, maybe. But I think at this point, I would I would love to see any future work that I would do in any sort of visual medium kind of be with me along the process. I mean, I just think that just makes a better product. Not that I have committed to anything like that. I'm just speaking kind of openly. I see that as a better thing than going, hey, rewrap this that I've done 2 years
I mean,
ago.
that's when audio chat becomes video chat. Surely that's the
Yeah. I will say I have to jump off in like 2 minutes. So
one more question then.
Yeah.
What's behind you?
This is my home studio, so I have the Dark Arena's metal logo and all the logos for the shows, and it's all soundproofed here at the house. So yeah, this is my little space.
In a room or in a cupboard?
No, it's actually like it's a big closet. It's a big walk-in closet. So yeah, kicked my husband out.
Thank you so much. Will you just give us one more sort of 30 seconds? This is why people need to tune in season 3.
People need to tune into season 3 because this story is so unbelievable. There's so much information, but there is so much information that has never been heard or, even seen. Some of the material in the web content's never even been seen. I think it's so important that people listen through 1 through 20. It's going to come out as a binge. It's structured that way for a reason. And it's just an incredible story that I think people are going to be completely blown away by.
Amazing. Thank you. I'm going to put all the links to everything you and Audio Chuck do in the description below. But
right.
really appreciate you taking the time to speak to me. Thank you.